along the way if you want to. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me share it, the slides onto Blackboard. Okay, so by the way, have you managed to download the textbook from Google Class? There's a yes or no in the chat box. The textbook is available free of charge online, I think. So it is very accessible to everybody. Please download the textbook for your own use. Okay. Okay, let me see scientific writing. Okay, group 1. Oh, it's not this one, scientific writing. Okay. I'm usually confused between your class and one other class in my department program that is research writing. Your class is scientific writing, not research writing. There you go. Okay, today we focus on introduction section as indicated on Blackboard, you know that. Here we go. So it is uploaded now on Blackboard. Okay, please check it out if you want to, or you can check it out at the end of the class as well, so that you can have a look at home. Okay, so that you can follow my lectures easily on the screen right now. And as usual, you know, our, the Zoom that I'm using is a free account. So please make sure that you, if you're kicked out, please log in again. Actually, this is a very good thing because you can take a short break after 40 minutes as well. So I decided to use Zoom because I realized that Zoom is better at recording, at the quality of recording, and so that I can upload the recording to Blackboard so that those of you who missed the class can have a look at home. And MS Team is very good as well, but for some reason, you know, my computer is not like MS Team very much. It usually crashes because of when I'm using MS Team. So Google Meet is a good option as well, but Google Meet is not and does not have the recording function, so that's not very good for those who miss the class in particular day. Okay, so I decided to use Zoom instead, even though there's some interruptions once in a while, but you take a short break at the same time, so it's not a big deal at all. Okay, let me share the screen with you guys for session 3 slides. Okay, yeah, Kellen, thank you. Yes, I look young. Thank you very much. I'm turning 19 today, so I'm young. Yep, thanks. Okay, so so last week we talked a lot about you know, structure of a research paper, right? So last week you read one sample research paper on running on empty, right? And we analyzed that paper together, and we come to the conclusion that we've got a very clear idea of the structure of a research paper. So before we do it, I want you to you know, pause a little bit and think of what we did last week. Yeah, that's correct, Wang Min. Yes, that's a very good one. Okay. So to begin with, let's review something we did last week. So okay, who could tell me again the title of the research paper that we read last week? What is the title of the paper that you read last week? Châu Vi Lâm. Châu Vi Lâm. Are you there, Lâm? Châu Vi Lâm. Lâm Châu Vi, I don't know. Yeah, but hello, are you there? Oh, you have no mic. Okay. Okay. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's right, Thu Dung. Last week we read about the title, the research paper entitled "Running on Empty," effects of food deprivation on concentration and perseverance by 2 students from Dark College. Exactly. Okay, so that is what we did last week. And also last week we went through some basic rules of academic language or academic writing. Okay, so who could tell me the structure of a research paper? How many sections are there in a standard research paper? Anybody can volunteer? How about Phi Long? How many sections are there in a research paper? Phi Long, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, teacher.
Okay, please.
I remember it's an abstract, introduction,
Yes.
methods,
results,
this discussion, conclusion, and
yes.
Lastly is preference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So somebody share the answers on the on the chat box as well, right? To Yung and somebody else. Okay, just share on the chat box. All right, Lilith can. Very good. 6 parts: abstract, introduction, methods, result, discussion, conclusion, and references. Okay, so what is an abstract? Mai Anh, what is an abstract? Okay, you have no mic again. Okay, so Mai Anh has no mic. So okay, somebody else. Somebody else. Anh Khoa. Oh, no mic either. Okay. Okay, so Kenlin, it is a summary. That's why Kenlin Vijay. Yes, abstract is a summary of the paper written last after other parts have been completed. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, it usually includes the main text and some keywords. Some keywords. Okay, that's correct. That's very good. Okay, awesome. So why is an abstract important? How useful is an abstract? Anybody can? Minh Quân, how useful is the abstract? Okay, yeah, Hugo, you're so quick. That's why it helps the reader to screen the paper. Exactly. It saves time. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Okay. It is not for the sake of the author, but it is for the sake of the readers. Okay. Very good. Okay. So 6 parts again, right? Visual abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, and references. Okay, so who can explain why I put a slash between discussion and conclusion? Discussion slash conclusion, why? Anybody? You? Okay, because we can have the conclusion in that part. Other can conclude or open a new conversation for readers. Yeah, but I mean, what I mean is that usually, they usually combine discussion and conclusion together. Sometimes they use the heading discussion, sometimes conclusion, right? So we rarely have discussion and then conclusion, but we do have that sometimes. Okay, so discussion and conclusion overlap quite a lot, and that's why they usually combine them together. Okay, that's very good. Okay, so we'll learn about how to write discussion later on in the class for sure. Okay, so what about the basic, rules of language or academic writing? So who could tell me some of them? Some basic rules of academic language or academic writing that I shared last week. Anyone?
Can I answer this question?
Sure, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, there are about 7 rules.
Yeah.
According to the language rules. First is using standard sentences. Second, using accurate and concise vocabulary. Third, use nominal groups over verbs. Fourth, use passive voice over active voice. The fifth is to avoid personal pronouns. Sixth is to avoid short forms and any abbreviations. And the last is use hedging words or phrases.
So Kelly, can you give me one example of hedging words or phrases?
Hedging words, maybe we use hedging is to express some degree of uncertainty, as well as to demonstrate politeness and indirectness. So maybe it's like it is possible that this vaccine is have a certain effect on disease A.
Yep, exactly.
But the results have to be.
So where do you usually see the hedging words or phrases in a research paper? In which section?
I think it's the conclusion part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sure. Okay, that's very good. Thank you, Lynn. That's a very good answer, and that's exactly what I mean last week. Okay, that's awesome. Right. So hedging words or phrases are very important for usually conclusion, because in research writing, you don't want to make a very absolute conclusions, because it is impossible in reality, right? Sometimes we find a certain correlation or causal relationship in a study, but you don't want to say that it is an absolute truth, because many big scientists are wrong, and for example, even some very big names like Isaac Newton could be wrong several centuries later. Okay, so the absolute conclusion should be avoided in research writing. That's correct. Okay, very good. Now let's move on to the class this morning. Okay, so let me just show again the 7 rules of academic writing before we move on. Okay. The first one is we use standard sentences, right? It is something very basic that I'm sure that a lot of you still make mistakes in. But anyway, so will you correct yourself along the way? Then we cannot present the whole thing again now, because it is a waste of time. Most of you are above that right now, but some of you are still struggling a little bit with sentence structures. And so when it comes to sentences, I don't want to burden you with a lot of terminology about grammar or structure, because your job is not to memorize that kind of sentences in English, because it is a waste of time again. But your job is to write correct sentences. That's all. You write correct sentences. You don't have to name them, but as long as you write correct sentences, you are great. Then we use concise vocabulary, accurate and concise vocabulary. This is the basic difference between academic writing and informal writing. And then nominal groups or noun phrases instead of verbs. This is particularly important in written English, especially written academic language. So in speaking, you don't need nominal groups. You can say, I decided to do something. But in writing, most scholars use I make a decision to do something, because when you use a nominal group, you make yourself more formal. And number 4, is indicated by Kenlin, passive voice over active voice. Of course, sometimes active voice is used as well. Passive voice is not always the case, but if you use active voice, try to avoid personal pronouns like I or we. And we say the research paper presents something instead of you say in this paper I present something. So I is not good in scientific writing. And again, passive voice is active voice is not forbidden, but it is usually limited in academic writing. Avoid personal pronouns, right? And short forms, abbreviations are avoided. And of course, sometimes we use hedging words and phrases in conclusion. That's correct. Let's move on. So this week, we focus on, we shed the light on, introduction. Shed the light on, like when the artist perform on the stage. Because the stage is huge. So to draw people's attention, they have to shed the light on where the actor is standing on the stage. In the same way, this week we shed the light on one section, that is introduction. We'll talk about the purpose of introduction. We'll talk about structure of introduction, and we'll talk about language for introduction. So of course, the purpose of introduction is quite obvious for sure, because when you look at this overall structure of a research paper, you see abstract, introduction, methodology, results, discussion, conclusion, and of course, below discussion, conclusion is references. You see that the fact is that in writing, we usually have a very symmetrical system, by which I mean, you see, when you write an essay, for example, you have introduction and you have conclusion, kind of beginning and the end. In the same manner, here we've got introduction and discussion of conclusion. This kind of, when you enter something, when you go to school, and you leave school 10 hours later, something like that. It's a common fact in life, right? You have something beginning and something at the end. It is obvious. And of course, with the research paper, we have a small knack there as well, that is abstract, because it is a research paper. So abstract is intended to help the readers, but abstract is not at all the most important part. It's not the main text. The abstract is just the belonging or the nagging thing, but it's not the main text component. Even though abstract writing is very important as well, but it is not the main text. So the main text, introduction first. So that's why introduction is important. And usually, when you conduct a research study, you understand your study very well. But when you present your paper to people, when you write your research report, and you usually think that, okay, I understand the story very well, but sometimes and you write in a certain way, but when your readers read your paper, they don't understand a lot of things, because you yourself understand, because you're the expert in the field, but the reader may not understand what you mean. And that's why you need to be very pedagogical, step by step, in leading your readers into your research paper and what you mean, what you studied in your experiment, for example. So that's why introduction is important, that lead people in to the main section of your report. So you see on the picture, you see that methodology and results make the central report section. That is the body of the essay, is what I mean. Yeah. So introduction lead people in, like a gate of the door, or the gate of a house, or the door of a house. It lead people in. So for now, before I present the structure of the introduction, introduction sound very simple, right? Just introduction. But as I think I presented briefly last week, introduction is quite complicated section to write. And that's why, for our class, the final product of the class is each of you, or no, not in your group, you can produce a introduction section. And that's all we require from you guys. It is a very complicated section because it involves a lot of reading, a lot of summarizing, a lot of skills to write a good introduction. Okay, so now, so I don't present the structure of the introduction right now, but what I'm going to do is I wanted you to read some sample and you draw the conclusion for yourself first. Okay, now let's look at the sample from your textbook. It is from your textbook. Actually, we have two samples today, one from textbook and one from other sources. Now, I want, for this section, I want you to pay very close attention, because if you don't pay attention, if you miss one part of the knowledge this morning, you may lose it forever. So that's why I wanted you to pay attention to understand the logic of each section, that I present this morning. So you see that, this research paper topic is synthesis of flexible polymer blends from polylactic, lactide, and rubber. To be honest with you, I don't understand. I'm not a chemistry major at all, but this paper is not too specialized for you to understand. You can understand it, and the point this morning is that I don't expect you to understand every single thing about this paper this morning, but we pay attention to the structure of the paper instead. So when you read the paper, I want you to notice the function or the role of each sentence in this introduction section sample. Okay. Now let's go very slowly and you take your time. Okay. And we've got 3 slides for this introduction section. I want you to focus on reading now, sentence by sentence, and try to understand as much as you can, and pay attention to the function or the role of each sentence, if possible. Okay, so let me read aloud the text now, okay? Polylactide, POA, have received much attention in recent years due to its biodegradable properties, which offer important economic benefits. POA is a polymer obtained from corn and is produced by the polymerization of lactide. So polymer is a kind of POA is a kind of polymer, okay? A kind of polymer. It has many possible uses in the biomedical field and has also been investigated as a potential engineering material. Okay. However, it has been found to be too weak under the impact of to be used commercially. Okay, so when you read this section, you know that they introduce polylactide. Polylactide is a kind of polymer with a lot of benefits, right? Because it is biodegradable. But it is too weak to use commercially, and that's why they cannot use a POA for maybe to produce home appliances, for example, a fan or a table, something like that, right? So that's the introduction. That's the lead-in information. Okay, please spend 1 or 2 minutes by yourself, reading this section again. Okay. So you know something about polymer, something about polylactide and its benefits and weaknesses, right? And let's move on. Okay, one way to toughen polymers. So in the previous one, they say, it is too weak to be used commercially. Okay, so now one solution, one way to toughen polymers is to incorporate a layer of rubber particles. Incorporate a layer of rubber particles. Incorporate means include, put in, include something. And there has been extensive research regarding the rubber modification of POA. Okay, you see the link to literature now. For example, PNAO showed that POA composites could be prepared using blending techniques, and more recently, Hillier established. Julia is one more scholar, okay? Established the toughness of such composites. That are two sources, okay? However, although the effect of the rubber particles on the mechanical properties of copolymer system was demonstrated over 2 years ago, little attention has been paid to the selection of an appropriate rubber component. Okay. So they point out, the way that people have used to toughen, to make their polymer stronger. That is the layer, to use a layer of rubber particles. And a lot of research has been done about this process, including Penny and Hillier. Okay. However, the author of this paper says that, even though some techniques have been used and found out by those scholars, little attention has been paid to the selection of an appropriate rubber component. Okay, so there's a gap there, right? There's a gap there. Now, the present paper presents a set of criteria for selecting such a component. The present paper presents a set of criteria for selecting such a component. On the basis of these criteria, it then describes the preparation of a set of polymer planes using PLA and a hydrocarbon rubber. This combination of two mechanistically distinct polymerizations form a novel copolymer in which the incorporation of PI significantly increased flexibility. Okay, so I give you a few minutes to revisit these 3 slides. You can do so in your textbook as well. It is from your textbook. So I want you to go through the 3 slides again. This is the model or the sample introduction section. I want you to go through again and pay attention to the role or the logic of the entire section and the role of each sentence in this paper, in this introduction section. Do you have any questions about the logic or the information in this sample introduction? You don't have to understand everything, but I mean, do you understand the logic of the sentences? Okay. So we will begin analyzing this sample, sentence by sentence right now, because this is very important, because you will write something like this for yourself in your thesis. So if you don't analyze, if you don't understand the structure very well first, you cannot do it. So knowing about the sample introduction alone is not enough. Knowing is the first step, but you have to do it. You have to do it, and if you want to do it, you have to analyze the structure first before you do it yourself. Okay. Okay. So how many sentences are there in this sample class? How many sentences are there? 10 for sure. Okay. 10 sentences. And each of the sentences have the same function, or sometimes two sentences fulfill one function. Okay. Now let's screen again. So we've got 10 sentences in total, right? So sentence number 1, polylactide has received much attention in recent years due to its biodegradable properties, which offer important economic benefits. Kind of, background information, right? Or, the importance of the topic, right? Is number 1. Number 2, they explain what POA is, right? Kind of like provide some more background information about the key term or the technical term used here. Okay, so I would describe sentence number 2, 3, and 4 is the same. That is, they provide background information about the study, about the topic in question. What about number 5? Who can explain number 5 for me, please? Okay, somebody who can explain the function of number 5? Quang Minh.
Yes, number 5 is kind of like a bridge between the general problem we can see from the 4 first sentences into the main topic and the teacher review, I think.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so you see the number 4 here. They raise a small problem. That is, so POA, has been found to be too weak to be used commercially. That is a problem they raise. And now, you see weak and toughen. So in terms of ideas, the two sentences are linked together because one problem is weak and the solution to this problem is to do something, right? And at the same time, sentence number 5, lead to the whole body of literature review as well. So the solution to the problem is that 1, 2, 3. So you list the solution here, and it is a kind of like lit review process. Okay, so number 6 and number 7. Sorry, number 6. What is the role of number 6? Thiên Kim.
Yes. The role of the sentence 6 is to clarify the idea of the topic we already present in sentence 5. Like
I'm sorry.
it more clear.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what is special about number 6 is that you see a lot of like citations, right? You see a lot of like authors, scholars' names. Like Penny's AO. Penny is the name of a scholar. Okay. So Penny AO. Yeah. Okay. So we have 1 minute left in Zoom. So we will log in again. Okay. Very soon. If you are out, please log in again. Okay. So Penny is the name of a scholar or a scientist who did research, who published a research paper somewhere. Okay. So Penny AO. Who know AO? What does AO mean? Penny AO.
I think it's a abbreviation for with partners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, AO is Latin, you know, for with associates, with his or her associates. That means, for example, you are publishing one. Okay. So for example, you know, a paper published a paper with 5 colleagues or 5 students in a group. So you know, so when you cite the name in your paper, you cannot write 5 family names there. It is a waste of time. So you just say the main author and AO. That means there's some other people as well involved in that particular publication as well. Okay. So Penny AO show that POA composites could be prepared using blending techniques. And more recently, Hillier is one scholar as well. So actually number 6 is a mini literature review. Okay. Because when you cite somebody, it's a kind of review. You know, for some people, this section of lit review right here is very long. It could be 1 page long or 2 pages long. Okay, but in this case, because it is a sample one, so they just make it 1 sentence. But in reality, it could be very long. It could be 1 or 2 pages long. So your introduction could be 2 pages long if it is a thesis. So just imagine your thesis could be maybe 80 pages long or 100 pages long. And so, you know, introduction could be 2 or 3 pages long. And that makes sense. Okay, so this is a mini version of the introduction that I want to show you so that you can visualize the structure first. And I introduce to you some real introduction section later on. Okay, so number 6 is a kind of lit review. Number 7. Minh Quân. What is the function of number 7? Okay. In other words, number 7 is about the gap, the knowledge gap or research gap, right? Many things have been done by other people in the field, but still there's some problem unsolved, right? Right. So little attention has been paid to the selection of an appropriate rubber component. Yeah, it is a kind of research gap. Now look at number 8 now. Number 8. What is the rule of number 8? Mai Thân. Okay, you have no mic again. Okay, so maybe somebody else then. Okay. Nguyễn Lê. Okay, no mic either. Okay. No mic. Anyone else? Nhật Minh.
Yes, I'm here. The purpose of the sentence A is describe the paper itself.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, so sentence number 8, like it introduces the current paper, right? Okay, so what is the connection between number 7 and number 8? What is the relationship between number 7 and number 8?
Can I answer this question?
Go ahead, Lynn. Yeah.
Yeah, I think number 7, like it gives the reason why we should do the research on this topic. And number 8 introduces the following work, the purpose of our paper.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's true.
Yeah, it's like a causal relationship.
It's like, you say, okay, there's a big river. There is a big river in this area, right? And there's no bridge just yet. And you say, okay, this river is very big and dangerous, but I don't see any bridge, across the river. So something has to be done about it, right? So then it's number 7. And number 8, you say, okay, so we plan to build a bridge across the river, and the bridge is like this. You see what I mean? So number 8 is a kind of like you introduce the bridge for the river, or for the gap in this case. Yeah. Okay, so it's number 8. Number 9. Ân Lê.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah.
I think the purpose of the sentence number 9 is to give us some details about the methodology of the paper.
Okay, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, something about the bridge, right? Something about the bridge, something about the study that you're doing. And number 9 is about the methods you used to conduct the study. Number 10. How about number 10? Number 10, how about Ngọc Anh?
Yes. Number 10 is to clarify the method that present in the number 9 sentence.
I don't think so, because we're not chemistry major, right? That's why we don't want to start number 10. Number 10 is actually the brief findings of the study. Okay, so it's okay. Just let's skip it and let's move on, because we're not chemistry major, so we might make sense. It does not make a lot of sense to us, But anyway, number 10, number 9, so number 8 is a kind of like a lead-in bridge to the current study, and number 9 is about the methods you used in the study, and number 10 is some basic findings you find in the study. But let's move on. Okay. So number 1 again. Number 1, POI has received much attention in recent years due to its biodegradable properties, which offer important economic benefits. It is about the importance of this research topic, right? The function is the writer try to establish the importance of this research topic, because a lot of attention has been paid, something like, and because of its economic benefits, right? So number 1 is a kind of like lead in. Number 2, PLA is a polymer obtained from corn and is produced by polymerization of lactide. So here the writer provides general background information for the reader. So just additional information about the topic at hand. Number 3, so like number 2, number 1, so number 3 just provide some more background information to the topic and the claim for significance. PLA has many possible uses in biomedical field and has also been investigated as a potential engineering material. And number 4, however, it has been found to be too weak under impact to be used commercially. The writer described a general problem area or current research focus of the field. Okay. Number 5, one way to toughen the polymers is to incorporate a layer of upper particles, so transition between the general problem and the lit review. Number 6, for example, okay, so it is a kind of a brief overview of key research projects in this area. In other words, it's a kind of lit review. Number 7, research gap, right? A gap in the research. A research gap, we say research gap or knowledge gap. Both are okay, right? Research gap or knowledge gap. And number 8, so the paper itself. Number 9, to give details about methodology reported in the paper. And the last one, number 10, the writer announces the findings of the study. Okay, so that is the overall structure, class. There are some variation here and there, It's not always that one, but usually that is the basic framework that you can use, to write your introduction. For example, when for sentence number 8, 9, and 10, you can write something else as well. You can include your research questions there, or your research objectives there, or research hypothesis there, right? So for some studies, you present research questions there. Usually the research question is a very important component of that introduction section as well. Let's give, so this is a very basic framework. And again, there's some variation, here and there, depending on your area of study, depending on your supervisor, depending on your personal style as well. And for sentence number 6, for example, so in this structure, you see that lit review is a part of introduction, right? Lit review is a part of the introduction. However, in reality, sometimes there are 2 options. Option number 1 is you include lit review as a part of introduction. And number two, you can write a separate lit review section below introduction. I will show you more example that way, But whatever it is, whatever option you choose, you need the same skill of how to write a lit review, right? Again, there are 2 options. There's some degree of variation, from this sample framework. For example, sometimes you may add something else to the introduction. For example, research questions or research objectives or research hypothesis. And sometimes you have one separate section about lit review as well, besides the lit review section within this big section. Okay, number 6, for example, is about lit review. And as I told you, some people write very long lit review in this introduction section. And because it is too long, sometimes they decided to select or include some very important, authors here in this introduction section. And then for the others, they move into one separate section called lit review section. But now let's finish this part first before I explain further, okay? So now, in general, you see this, okay? We go from, importance of the research topic to background information, something like that, to sentence number 4, one problem, okay? And number 5, transition to lit review. Number 6, lit review. Number 7, research gap. Number 8, and number 9, number 10, about the paper itself. That is the overall logic, overall logic. So it's quite complicated, Basically, class. So this is the introduction model from your textbook, which is a very good one. However, to make yourself simpler, we have 4 components. Number 1 is a kind of background. Number 2 is a kind of lit review. Number 3 is a kind of research gap. And number 4 is a kind of current paper. The 4 keywords that I want you to memorize, okay? Number 1, the whole number 1, we have a lot of things over here, right? But, essentially it is about a background information, right? Background information. Number 2 is about lit review. Number 3 is about research gap. And number 4 is about a current paper. Does it make sense, class? Any questions so far about the structure of introduction section? Is it all clear, class, so far? Yes. Yes, Ingi? Terminology, okay. Terminology means terms, okay? Terminology, like method and methodology, right? Methodology means methods in general. And terminology means terms in general. Technical terms or jargon, okay? Is it clear, Ingi? Okay, great. Okay, now let's move on. Let's do one practice exercise before we move on to language for introduction model. Okay, now look at it. Okay, now again, this introduction session has 3 slides, and I want you to read slowly, very slowly, sentence by sentence of each slide. Okay, I take your time. Okay, so who can read aloud this slide, folks? Philong, can you read aloud the text on the screen?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the prevalence of cardiometabolic risk factor is rapidly increasing in South Korea. The prevalence of overweight in the adult population increased from 26% in 1998 to 32% in 2007. And that of metabolic syndromes in the adult populations increased from 25% to 31% in the same time period. Such changes can lead not only to increased cardiovascular disease, mortalities, and total mortalities, but also eventually to increase healthcare costs.
Thank you. You know, so in this case, you see that you see 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 numbers over here, right? Okay. So 1, 2007, 1, and then time period 2, and then mortality 3, and then healthcare costs 4. So they cite four sources of information from 4 scholars, right? And you know, in this case, they use the term mortality, disease mortality, or mortality rate. Okay, something mortality means death, but death is a common language, you know, a common word, and mortality is a technical word. It's a term, medical term, right? It is more accurate than death, and that's why they use mortality. Tử vong á, tử vong thường mà nói là chết là từ bình thường, còn tử vong mới là cái từ chính xác. You see what I mean by accurate and concise vocabulary? Yeah, so mortality means death. Okay, let's move on to the second slide. Okay. I guess you're done, right? Okay, somebody please read. Please read this text, please.
Let me read it.
Okay.
Okay. One of the main driving forces for increased cardiometabolic risk factors could be unhealthy dietary choices, including increased consumption of fast food. The consumption of instant noodles is relatively high among Asian populations, and especially among South Koreans, who consumed 3.4 billion packages of instant noodles in 2010, which makes South Koreans the highest consumers per capita of instant noodles in the world. Lee et al. Reported an increased prevalence of cardiometabolic prevalence of cardiometabolic risk factors associated with a dietary pattern high in intake of instant noodles, hamburgers, and pizza in a population of Korean men. However, the association between instant noodle intake and metabolic syndrome, independent of dietary patterns, has not been investigated.
Now keep
Therefore,
reading. Keep reading.
The aim of this study The aim of this study was to investigate the association between dietary patterns, instant noodle consumption, and cardiometabolic risk factors by using the Korean National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, cross-sectional survey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. This is a very, very interesting study, folks, in nutrition studies, right? So let's analyze the one by one, okay? So let's look at the model, okay? The model here. So let's assume that we've got 4 main components in this introduction model: 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So number 1 is kind of background information. Number 2 is look review. Number 3, research gap. And number 4, the current study description. So let's match number 1, 2, 3, 4 to the sentences in this one. So the prevalence of cardiometabolic risk factors is rapidly increasing in South Korea. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Chat box, please. So the first sentence is it number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Okay. Yeah, so number 1. Okay, number 1. Good. Okay. Now the second sentence. The prevalence of overweight in the adult population increased from 26% in 1998 to 32% in 2007. And that of metabolic syndrome in the adult population increased from 25% to 31% in the same time period. So number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or number 4? Actually, 1 and 2. 1 and 2, because in terms of content, it is still background information, right? But you see citations, yeah, it is literature review. Because, you know, when you say that 25% or 32%, you need evidence from literature. And, you know, number 1 in the brackets, 2007, number 1 in the brackets, you know, it is the source of the information in this case, because then they're not using APA. So that's why you don't see it very clearly, but it is a kind of citation. So it is a kind of literature review as well. So this sentence, it is both 1 and 2. It's overlapping. It's not as clear as theory. You see what I mean? In reality, they overlap quite a lot. Okay, let's move on. Let's continue. Such changes can lead not only to increased cardiovascular disease mortality, but total mortality, but also eventually to increase healthcare costs. Again, it's 1 and 2. Background information and little review. Okay, now, one of the main driving forces for increased cardiometabolic risk factors could be unhealthy dietary choices. Okay, so this one is, of course, number 2. And how does it link to the previous one? Okay, so how does the sentence link to the previous one? Hiếu Ngô.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah.
I think that the next paragraph linked to the first one is that it provides more information about the cardiometabolic risk.
What kind of information is it? What kind of information are you talking about?
It talk about the unhealthy dietary choices, including increased consumption of fast food.
Yeah, it tries to explain the problem, right? That presented earlier. So the reason why that is unhealthy dietary choices. Okay. Okay, so including consumption of fast food. Okay, good. So you see that in the previous one, they talk about the problem of increased cardiovascular risk factors, and it's very expensive. It's very dangerous and expensive, so on and so forth. And now they say that so the reason is unhealthy dietary choices, including fast food consumption. So again, this is of course number 2, and logically speaking, it explains the reasons why the problem was there in the first place. So see, then next, the consumption of instant noodles. So they go from something big to something smaller, right? Fast food and then instant noodle. You see what I mean? Okay. So the consumption of instant noodles is relatively high among Asian populations, and especially among South Koreans, who consume 3.4 billion packages of instant noodles in 2010, which makes South Koreans the biggest consumers per capita of instant noodles in the world. Okay, number 7. Sorry, Leo reported an increased prevalence of cardiometabolic risk factors associated with dietary pattern in an intake of instant noodles, hamburgers, and pizza in the population of Korean men. However, the association between instant noodle intake and metabolic syndrome, independent of dietary patterns, has not been investigated. So, however, what is it? However, that the sentence begins with however. What is it, class? What number is it? Yeah, it's number 3. Research gap. Exactly. Research gap. Yeah. Do you understand this gap? That means, like Leo, found out the positive correlation between, cardiometabolic risk factors and unhealthy diet, including noodles, hamburgers, and pizza. So they see that kind of positive correlation between the 2 factors. But so that study is about unhealthy diet. But what about instant noodle alone? If you say it is an unhealthy diet, yeah, I agree that there's some problem or some harm, caused by unhealthy diet. But so what if instant noodle is not included, right? What about instant noodle? If you eat instant noodle alone, does instant noodle have any impact on the risk of cardiovascular, cardiometabolic diseases? So that's the gap that nobody has done before, and therefore, this study focus on that gap. The preach is, try to bridge the gap, and the study, was to investigate. The study was to investigate this association between dietary patterns, instant noodle consumption, and cardiometabolic risk factors. That is the purpose or the objective of the study. By using the Korean National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, cross-sectional survey, it is the method. You see what I mean? So you understand that in this case, the authors do not collect new data, but they use the data from the Korean National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. It is a national survey every year conducted by the Ministry of Health in South Korea. So they rely on secondary data. They don't collect new data or primary data at all. That is the implication here, that you understand. If you learn about research method, you understand that it is not producing any fresh or primary data, but they make use of primary data from other sources. That is the secondary data from a very important agency of the government. Yeah. So in here, the order of the content for the lessons is not very important. It depends. It varies from study to study. But basically, we usually present something like methodology and research questions or research objectives in the current study section in this introduction section. I say again, it is relatively, that way. It could be different, a little bit different. There's some variation in different versions of the studies, different studies as well. Okay, so now when you go home, I encourage you to, if possible, to when you read some other sample papers, try to notice the structure of the introduction. When you read them at home by yourself, and you see that in one way or another they follow this general framework, and which is very very useful. Very logical in a sense. Now let's move on to the second part of the class this morning, which is not the focus of the class today, but because we have two more sections, for the language. But let's talk about tenses, about sentence connections, about active voice, passive voice, and about paragraphing. Now, I want you to observe, how the tenses are used in our sample introduction. And what are the conclusions about the tenses used in writing introduction section? So let's get back to our sample, okay? So let's look at this one, okay? This one is okay too. Now, look at the first sentence. Okay, now I will show you the other one so that you can see better, huh? Okay. Okay, look at sentence number 1. What tense is it in? Chat box, please. What tense is again? Present perfect, okay. Number 2. Number 2, yeah, number 2, simple present. Number 3, simple present. Number 4, present perfect, okay. Number 5, simple present and present perfect. Number 6, simple past. Number 7, present perfect. Number 8, simple present. Number 9, simple present. And number 10, simple past. Okay. So why simple present, simple past, present perfect? Okay, please log in again soon. Hello, Kutin again. Okay, let's wait for 1 more minute before all your friends, are in the room so that we can start talking so that your friends won't miss any information from the class. So class, so you have seen 3 tenses in this introduction section, right? So what conclusions do you have about the tenses for introduction section? Do you have any conclusions? Anybody? Okay. No, Hugh. Wouldn't say all use present tense. No, because you see simple present, simple past, and present perfect as well. Right, that's simple past too. Okay, so the rule here is that we use simple past for lit review. Okay, we use simple past for lit review. Does it make sense? Yeah, because lit review is we describe something people did in the past, already in the past. So basically, for the most part, we use simple present, except for lit review. That's the rule of thumb. It could be wrong. It depends. But usually that's correct. Okay. Let's look at the other one again. Okay. Look at the other sample again about is the noodle intake in South Korea. Okay. Now look at that one now, so that you can have confirm your conclusion. You see the first one, okay? The first sentence is rapidly increasing, simple present, okay? Number 2, increased, simple past, because let's review. It is in the past. And then in the same way, increased from something. Okay, again, simple past. Such changes can lead to, okay, this is the comment from the author. It's not lip review. The comment, okay? And one of the main driving forces for something could be in the past because let's review. Okay. Câu tiếp theo nè. The consumption of instant noodles is relatively high among Asian populations and especially among South Koreans. Thì tại sao câu này let's review mà lại dùng hiện tại is? Tại vì đó là một cái sự thật bây giờ vẫn còn đúng. Okay, it is still true right now. But who consumed 3.4 billion packages of instant noodle in 2010? It is in the past. 2010 in the past, and look review. Would make South Koreans the highest consumers per capita of instant noodles in the world. Thì bây giờ vẫn đúng, chỉ dùng là makes. Simple present. Okay. So in general, when you report the findings from the past, use simple past. But if you comment, you insert your comment in that review, use simple present. Does it make sense? Do you have any question about the tenses here? It is a very tricky part. Many people ask me about this one, but that is the way. And the last part, okay, look at the last part. The study, okay.
Can I speak it?
Yes.
You're talking about the tricky in the sentence 7 about the past simple past, right?
Yeah.
I think it's simple past because it's an old data. And can the data until now can be changed. It may be changed. So we use simple past here, and it's not too very tricky, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's the way. That's the distinction we usually make. Yeah, that's true. But in reality, you know, there's some special cases in which you don't know what tends to use. So just remember that. Yeah, that's true. That, I mean, you understand the issue very well, the story very well. Then I agree. Yeah. So when you report something with specific time in the past, use simple past. When you make a general claims that could be still true right now, use simple present. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We will practice more when you do more exercises in the week after next. I think you will understand, and you will see some. You practice what you learned today, so that you know it is become more ingrained in your writing habits. Okay. Now, look at sentence number 8 here on the screen. The present paper presents a set of criteria for selecting such a component. What tense is it? Simple present for sure, right? In the same way, simple present. But this one, simple past. Because number 8 and number 9 is about the present paper, the paper you're reading right now, right? But number 10, you describe an action in the past, you know, because you report the findings. You did it before and you found something before and you report it here. So this combination of two distinct something formed a novel copolymer. It is something you did an experiment and you saw it. It is in the past. It's very subtle differences here, okay? Okay, so therefore the aim of this study was to investigate. So again, was to simple past. This study was done in the past, and you write a report on the study. But if you say this paper, you say this paper is something, simple present. Okay, very subtle differences that I want you to distinguish between similar tenses in writing. Okay, let's move on. Okay, sentence connection. You know, it's just theory now. Okay, but you know, if you read the sample again, you notice that the sentences are very well connected in different ways. It could be, you know, there's some linking devices, very obvious linking devices, or there could be some, you know, like content connection as well. In this case, for example, you see stable asthma, instable asthma. So you repeat something. It is a way to create a coherence or cohesion for the text. Or you know, rubber and the rubber. So you repeat, you know, or sometimes you use, you know, like him or her or it, you know, to connect cohesion in the text. It's a long story, you know, but I remind you to do that. But let's practice more the week after next. Or this one, you use these methods. Okay, so many researchers have suggested ways, and you say these methods. Methods here refer to ways, and these methods means these ways. On the basis of this criteria, describe preparation of a set blending. So this combination, that means this blending, very cohesive in content. Okay, passive voice, active voice. You see, as I told you earlier, sometimes we cannot avoid active voice. So in those cases, try to avoid personal pronouns. Like, instead of saying, in this article, I describe something, you say this article describes something, right? So you don't have I or we there, but it still makes sense. Or the present people present something. You don't say in the present people, I present something. No, you say the present people present something. And paragraphing. Okay, now I want you to look at the sample again and see how, the paragraphs are divided into in the sample introduction section. Okay, let me yeah, put it here, share screen. Okay, so let's go to one text together in the textbook. Is the textbook. Okay, so how many paragraphs you see here? 3, right? So usually the first one is background information. The second one is literature review and research gap. And the last one is the current study. That's the traditional structure or paragraphing structure of introduction. So usually, because research gap is usually very small, very, very short. So we combine it with lit review into one paragraph. Okay. But again, sometimes the distinction between different parts over here are blurry, so it's relatively that way. Okay, so I've just presented, the basic information about, introduction structure this morning, and some basic language as well for introduction this morning. We have one more session, the entire session, to do exercises for this kind of stuff, introduction. So because we have 3 weeks for introduction. So next week, I will teach you about lit review, only about lit review. Okay, and the week after next, we do exercises about lit review and about language for introduction section. Do you have any questions so far? Are you hungry? Are you ready for lunch? Do you see yourself in the picture? Do you see yourself in this picture? No? Okay. I think that's all for the class this morning class. Do you have any questions or comments or queries? Is it all clear, class? No, if we go step by step, writing is not that hard at all. is pretty attainable, right? Yeah, I will upload the video to Blackboard. Okay, so Kiều Trinh, in the first session of offline class, I mostly talking about research, what research actually is. I want you to understand what research is and the research, what does a research process look like? Okay, so let me show you the slides for session 1 again. Okay, I think that you can have access to slides for session 1 on Blackboard. It is there on Blackboard. Right? Right. Okay, so for those of you who are not sure about session 1, I advise you to look again at the slides for session 1 at home. And if you don't understand something, please ask me in class next week, because I don't have time to present again session 1 slides right now. It's a lot of information in session. It's very hard to summarize as well, because it was a 90 minutes class with a lot of lecturing to do. And so please have a look again at home. And if you have any questions, please ask me in class next week. Okay, any more questions? Okay, so let's call it a day now, class, and enjoy your lunch and stay healthy and stuff. I will see you in class next week, next Thursday morning. Okay, so goodbye, class. Have a good one.